So I have been playing a lot of Zenless Zone Zero as of late. It's a very fun game, but it's difficult for me to recommend to players due to it being yet another live service gotcha. Despite that, I still want to take a moment to speak about what I enjoy about it, as it is something that I've spent a great deal of time on anyway. If you like what you hear, then just play at your own discretion and have a good time. With that out of the way, allow me to begin. One of the things that immediately drew me in was the art design. I am absolutely still in love with the retro urban aesthetic of New Eridu, and as someone who grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s with the Sega Dreamcast, it definitely gives me that nostalgic jet set radio vibe. This is also something that can extend to the character design itself. They're all visually iconic, colorful, expressive, and most importantly, they're fun. They all have unique silhouettes that are easily identifiable, and their visuals give you a strong impression of the character at a glance. One of my favorites is definitely Pulchra. She resides in the outer ring of New Eridu, which is basically a desert, and was recently recruited by a renowned biker gang known as the Sons of Caledon. Her outward appearance gives the impression of a hard-edged mercenary who will get the job done by any means, and she is. Though if you simply remove her mask, suddenly she's absolutely adorable, and that tough facade immediately falls off. So now you know why she wears the mask, even in places where she really doesn't have to. If I'm being honest, I haven't seen character design this fun since Xenoblade 2 in 2017, and it's honestly a shame how hard that is to come by for me. Now, what keeps me coming back to Zenless is definitely its combat and how it borrows from other character action and fighting games. Zenless is obviously not a fighting game, but there's quite a bit from those games that translates over really well, that do make players feel pretty comfortable outside of just having a training mode that they haven't updated in a while, and the Battle Tower, which is the equivalent of a survival mode. First, their stun. Inflict enough impact on an enemy's daze meter and they will be stunned, giving you a brief window to dish out increased damage. Most of the game's combat revolves around this, and this sort of design has been around since Street Fighter II in the arcades. This is also common in games nowadays like Monster Hunter and modern Final Fantasy, though I would argue Zenless applies these functions a lot better due to the myriad of ways to take advantage of it, like with manual chain attack, and how well it's used actually increases your performance across the board. Since this is a character action game, there is far more freedom in how the player can express themselves in combat, more so than something like Honkai Star Rail. The combat has often been compared to Devil May Cry, and I can see why. Some of the endgame content is pretty challenging, and it tends to test more mechanical skill rather than how well your numbers are at times. Executing cancels and custom combo strings is definitely possible and expected of you, and having the ability to switch characters while committing to a command from the previous one is definitely straight out of team fighting games like Marvel vs. Capcom, BlazBlue Cross Tag, or even Dragon Ball FighterZ. Team building, of course, is a key part in how combat functions, and every character has their own dynamic that allows them to synergize with one another. And of course, characters often borrow their design from other fighting game archetypes as well. The most recent character they put in the game as of the writing of the script was Hugo. His main gimmick is called Totalized, which completely eliminates an enemy's stun window to cash out a ton of damage all at once. I'm talking damage by the millions, obliterating his enemies Exodia style. Due to this, he basically has the highest DPS in the game at the moment and is effectively built for speedruns. The most obvious comparison I tend to relate his design to is Mortal Kombat, since his Totalize feels evocative of the iconic fatalities you can perform on your enemy when they're defenseless, though this is sort of a surface level look at it. Hugo's gimmick comes with some major drawbacks though. He can't totalize an enemy who is not stunned, and enemies who cannot be stunned are immune to this. He also needs to have a stunned character or two with him on his team to be used effectively against those who can be stunned, since his daze multipliers are all abysmal. He's actually the only character that incentivizes players to run two stunned characters alongside of him due to his core passive, increasing his attack for each one. Double stun in a team is absolutely worthless in any other context of the game's design currently, as only Hugo can make this viable right now. This means that if Hugo is on your team, the rest of the team must be stunned agents to exclusively revolve around him. This makes him a relatively niche character despite how massive his damage is. I don't know what kind of archetype of character you would call this, but there's a very similar character like this in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Phoenix. Phoenix is pretty unassuming at first glance, and her design is fairly simplistic relative to the rest of the cast, and she barely has any HP at all. However, if you have the maximum of 5 meter and she dies, Phoenix loses herself and transforms into the Dark Phoenix. This not only gives her a second health bar, but all of her best traits are increased tenfold, and even more so in X Factor. She's arguably one of the best characters in the game and can easily ruin entire teams by herself before they even get a chance to fight back, as if she were some kind of final boss. The trade-off is that, much like Hugo, the entire team needs to be built exclusively to summon Dark Phoenix. There's no reason to use Hugo if you don't plan your entire team around obliterating everything with his Total Eyes, and there's no reason to use Phoenix in your team unless Dark Phoenix was your win condition. That being said, Hugo isn't really breaking the game in half like Phoenix does. His playstyle just looks insane at a glance because he makes all of the easiest matchups look even easier. Another fighting game I wanted to mention was Dissidia Final Fantasy, specifically NT, the console and arcade release. As much as I enjoyed the game, its reception is pretty awful, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I brought this game up specifically because I wanted to talk about one of my main characters, Squall, from Final Fantasy VIII. Squall is iconic for one reason, his weapon, the Gunblade. The idea is that every swing of his blade can set off explosive shells for increased damage. So how do you do this? By timing his swings to his specific rhythm. This is obviously meant to reference Final Fantasy VIII, as timing your swings allowed you to achieve your limit break. Now, if you've played Zenless Zone Zero already, you probably already know which character I'm about to mention, who basically copied this design and made it their own. Yes, I am referring to Soldier 11. In the context of Dissidia NT, on average, Squall's bravery damage is on par with most vanguards in the game, like Garland or Sephiroth, if you time his swings correctly. If you aren't, his damage is honestly below most characters in his own class, to the point where you'd probably be better off playing someone else. I feel like this is true for Soldier 11 as well. She's a very strong and incredibly rewarding character to play when you get the rhythm of her fire suppression down, but is effectively useless as a character if you don't. Soldier 11 doesn't get better as a character unless you also improve your execution as a player. It doesn't matter if she's level 60, if her drive discs are near perfect, if your core passive is maxed, or even if you have the best weapon for her. And even if this is a gacha game, it doesn't matter how much money you spend just to get all of her mindscapes. None of that matters if you cannot grasp how her fire suppression works. If you plan on playing Soldier 11 effectively long term, the only way to make this easier for you is to play her often, practice, and improve in the same way that any fighting game would expect of you, or just pick someone else that suits you better. This is also why I don't worry about the conversations surrounding HP inflation, as those who mention it in bad faith often aren't really interested in improving at the game, or just don't like the game at all. This sort of complex approach to character design does make me fear for Yishuan's reception, as she has a completely different set of mechanics that play by different rules. Even characters like Haramasa actually confound people, even though all he really does is spam dash attack combos and weave back out when he can't anymore. But there's a character and playstyle in this game for everyone. Not every glove will fit every hand. I may not like how Anton plays, since his combos feel clunky and he's not very mobile, and I may not like how Astriel's gameplay simply involves her sitting in the back and doing nothing. But someone out there appreciates them, and that's enough for me. If I had to pick a favorite or a main character from this first season, it would definitely be Yanagi. She's an agent from Section 6 who is Zenless' equivalent to an elite special forces squad. Her playstyle relies on swapping stances to maintain uptime on her passive buffs to unlock separate combo chains. Jogen stands for horizontal combos, Kagen stands for vertical combos. This archetype of stance character is seen far too often in fighting games nowadays, be it Pyra and Mithra in Super Smash Bros. Or Narmaya in Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. Considering that I use those characters quite frequently, it's pretty clear that I have a type. Though, really, I enjoyed her playstyle so much because she is the first character to make Anomaly as a playstyle seem fun for me, and those buffs from the Lost Void make her even more absurd. There are certainly a lot more comparisons I can make to fighting games, but I think you get it by now, even if I am just scratching the surface of it. Anyway, that is all I wanted to share on this game. I have been streaming it sometimes, but I don't have much time to myself lately due to work, and it's why I can't upload as much as I'd like to. If I had any criticism on the game, it would just be its story, specifically in 1.4 when Miyabi was introduced. I just felt like that section of the story was the weakest, but I do enjoy the story otherwise. I am still pretty excited for the 2.0 story, the Hong Kong-inspired Wi-Fi Peninsula, as well as Grandmaster Yishuan in Jufufu. By the time this video releases, the update should have gone live by now, so if you have any thoughts, please share them in the comments. And finally, be safe, be kind, and be well.
Stay awake, wash it all fall, yeah, we wash it all break. How long till we all fade away?